Hello, kia ora. Welcome to KiwiRPG's panel this week on getting to know your publishers, getting to work with publishers, and collaborating with people who publish TTRPGs. I'm Cam Banks. I have been thrust into the role of hosting this panel. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm very glad to do that. I'm going to have my two amazing guests, Mike and Grant, introduce themselves in just a minute. But I will say I am so thankful that we have this set up. This week has been awesome so far. Lots of great games and panels already, and I'm glad you've tuned in for this one. So without further ado, yes, I said I'm Cam. I've been working with publishers for almost the entirety of my tabletop RPG career, and it is certainly a very mixed bag. So I think we'll have a lot to talk about today. Mike, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yep, I'm Michael Sands. I'm most well known for Monster of the Week, which I publish in partnership with Evil Hat Games, which I'm sure we'll come back to in the course of this. And I've also self-published a few games and done many other designs going back that were never published and probably never should be.
Kia ora koutou, I'm Grant Robinson. I'm much more part-timey than these other gentlemen, but I've been contributing to a variety of items. Started, and I'm quite excited to share stories for anyone who wants to listen to a story.
Cool. Well, we've got loads of time. I'm sure we have something like 7 hours, I think. Isn't that right? So we can talk for No, we won't keep you that long. I was also gonna say this is really just the Guys with Beards podcast panel that we're doing. It's very important that you join us if you are also someone like that. No, I think what's probably going to be really good is if we do a little bit of sort of a conversation with Cordero first about our involvement with publishers and tabletop industry, what it's been like for us, and then open it to the floor for some questions. If the chat or viewers want to ask things about what it's like getting your stuff published or working with people who do publish games, that would be really cool to throw out there. I guess I'll lead off. My experience with publishers goes all the way back to the 2000s, when third edition D&D was just out. I was involved in the fan community online for Dragonlance, the setting that was had not yet been published in any sort of form in third edition, but we were fans and wanted to make our own rules and stuff for playing in Dragonlance. And so I did a lot of the character conversions from the characters from the modules that were originally first edition, and we'd post them up online and on forums and stuff. And we drew the attention of Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, who had started a kind of a company or had a license from Wizards of the Coast to make the official Dragonlance book. And so they were going to make a Dragonlance campaign setting, and they wanted a whole bunch of fans who were very keen to help them work on that. So I was one of those the people who did that. My first experience with that was quite weird. I did not get paid for my work on that first book, which I thought, oh, this is cool. I'm working on this, helping these people. The most important lesson I learned from that was don't ever do that. Don't ever do unpaid work for a big publisher ever. I got paid after that. That was fine, but that initial work was kind of like a volunteer style setup. But it did get me some good experience about working with things like document templates and sending in things and editing and all that whole process. Grant, how did you get started working with publishers in your sort of neck of the woods?
Well, it's I'm not sure that I've actually given the story all at once to people, but so again, we're in the 2000s, and I had a group of friends who were very keen on I think it was FanPro that was publishing Shadowrun, BattleTech, Leviathan. There were a bunch of things, and at the time I thought, oh, this is exciting. I really enjoy the system. I really enjoy the universe. I like playing with these people. I'll become an official rep and run demo games. And so that was step one on my eventual master plan as I started running these games and building up a local community. For a number of years, I was the guy who ran official Shadowrun at Capcom and other bits and pieces. I wound up going to Gen Con Australia and choosing a poor selection of things, which would mean that I couldn't really enjoy the rest of the con because I was running too much Shadowrun. And then at that point, there was, I'm not really sure how much to go into it because it could derail the whole conversation, but there was some turmoil amongst the writers of Shadowrun, and people who are a bit longer in the tooth or grayer in the beard might remember that scenario. I'm happy to talk to it offline. But at that point, there was an exodus of writers, and I thought, you know what? I've written modules for myself. I've written settings. I think I'm pretty good. I'll give it a go. And leaning on my connections through the demo community, I got an introduction to the then brand new line developer for Shadowrun, who was Jason Hardy at the time, and said, "Hey, look, I've got this idea." And he said, "Well, I'm new. I haven't set things up. Pitch me." And I pitched him, and then he said, "Yes, let's do it." And I wrote them my first ebook, which was, I think it was 2012. It was a long time ago, so a bit of a winding path. And I'm not sure that path is one that other people can follow. I think that the bushes have grown over the path behind me, but I think that there are better paths now that people can use to get into that environment. So after that, I generally, I'm not a super prolific writer. I generally get a couple of items, 1 or 2 items out a year, and of varying sizes depending on what's going on with the rest of my life. So that was my journey.
Michael, what about yourself?
Yeah. So, I mean, in some ways, my journey starts right back in the 1980s when I started like homebrewing stuff and writing stuff for my own games, right? Because I think that a lot of it comes from just having been tinkering around with things all the way through. First actual publishing wasn't till the late 90s, where I ended up doing a tiny little piece in one of the GURPS traveler books, which was purely because I was on their mailing list and into GURPS and Traveller at the time. And they said, we need some people to put in some extra vehicles for this new book we've got coming up. So that one was a pretty simple little tiny bit of work. I think I got paid like $200 of Steve Jackson Games shop credit, so it was not bad, but not much. Then I went off and was just doing my own thing again for a while through the 2000s, getting involved in a lot of the online game design communities like the Forge and Story Games, and like pre-game jam things like the Game Chef contests. And that kind of went on till I self-published Monster of the Week in 2012, which through Grant was saying about paths that you can't really take to follow. So my path was, I self-published Monster of the Week. One of the people in Fred Hicks' game group got a copy of the self-published Monster of the Week and ran it for them. Fred thought it was really great, and it was sad that it wasn't in wider distribution. So he got in touch with me and offered to get it published by Evil Hat so it could get into shops around the world. So there's no real lessons to draw from that path, I think. However, like that relationship's gone on to be really successful, partly because Evil Hat are really great people to work with, but also because Monster of the Week's gone on to be one of their big sellers and a line that's kind of been a persistent, solid sales of the books, even with and we've now put out a few supplements as well, so that's carrying on. That's pretty much my story.
I would disagree a little bit with what you said. I think there are paths that are similar that you could follow, and one of the things that I would like to touch on is like the different avenues that we've kind of come into this kind of do start by putting ourselves out there, right? I think
that's true.
I did some fan stuff. I think, Grant, you were saying you did like some representation, and it's kind of, you get yourself noticed, right? And I think the first kind of takeaway I would say from the three of us, and this is true, I think, for many people I've talked to in the past, how they got onboarded into this whole weird world of publishing, whether it's self-publishing, working as a fan or a volunteer, or doing some other kind of stuff online. You attract the attention of people who do either recruit or sort of see your work and sort of say, "Hey, that's someone who I might want to, work with." Would you agree, or do you think there's sort of like a secret fourth way that we haven't talked about?
No, I think you're right. I mean, I was jokingly saying the thing about the path because, like, you couldn't try and make that specific path, right?
Right, right,
But
right.
yeah, you're right. The general thing of like putting stuff out there, some of it will get noticed, and
Yeah.
and you're definitely not going to be noticed if you don't put stuff out.
I agree completely with that last point. If you don't do anything, then people don't know that you've got this brilliant world just sitting on your hard disk, right? Nobody's going to knock on your door and say, by any chance, do you have a cool new mechanic for social combat?
Yeah.
Right? That's not going to happen. By the same token, I feel, looking back on what I did, that it's not guaranteed.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
if for example you go and you put out and there's a competition, or you put out a good thing on DM's Guild, I think that is an amazing first step.
Yeah.
But putting that thing up there is not a guaranteed path to further stuff. Once you've got a little bit of history, then I feel probably it's more about networking and selling people on your vision
Yeah.
rather than necessarily just producing good things. Not that, sorry, let me reframe. If you want to work as on these larger pieces with larger organizations, I think that there needs, from their point of view, they need to be able to see you and they need to be able to see what you've done, and that needs to be easy for them. It is perfectly valid to write cool stuff and turn it out, whether you've got an audience of one or an audience of 100,000, and just doing it for yourself. But since we're talking specifically about working with the publishers,
Right.
I think there is a part of the process which isn't just doing a good thing and putting it up once.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of making it happen that needs to happen.
I wonder sometimes whether that's actually like the biggest problem that people have when they're trying to get involved in this, to get more stuff out there or get connected with people, is that they know maybe the first one or two steps, because people like us have told them on forums or online, or blog posts, just whatever, or they've seen it happen. But then there's that kind of, now you have to kind of stick to it. That's the extra step, which is really hard to do. Like, I know many people who've sort of even done a Kickstarter as their first thing, and they've got the attention of someone who says, "Let's just do this, and maybe we'll do fulfillment, maybe we'll sort of bring you into the house," and then they're a one and done, and that's it. They haven't got what they wanted, what they need to do after that to continue whatever kind of progress they could make. I know it's really difficult. I think I know for myself that there are times when, if you didn't have someone coming along and saying, "Hey, I think we kind of would like to have this additional product," or "We've got this other thing in the wings that we kind of wouldn't mind having you on." If I hadn't had someone willing to do that, maybe I wouldn't have been able to keep leapfrogging into things to the point where I do have that network, right? Because that's a big deal. Any thoughts about that, Mike? I mean, I don't know whether the sort of the self-publishing to surprise you've been given distribution is a big.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that in particular, but certainly like each of the supplements for Monster of the Week, so Tome of Mysteries, the Codex of Worlds, and Hunter's Journal Slayer Survival Kit, each one of those was actually prompted by someone else, not me. So Tome of Mysteries kind of got started in the G plus Monster of the Week community, where people were publishing, like just putting up lots of their fan-made adventures, and Mark Tygart, who was one of the members of that group, like got in touch with me and said, "Sure, wouldn't it be cool to like get the best of these and put them in a book?" Which eventually turned into the Tome of Mysteries, as was published with Evil Hat. And Codex of Worlds was suggested by Merrick Galonka because he had some ideas for like alternate settings, and that kind of, the rest of the book grew out of that. And Hunter's Journal was started as like a bunch of material that Luke Green had put together of all just different bits of advice and things. So basically, because they contacted Evil Hat and said, I've got this idea for a Monster of the Week book, and that's where those came from. So that that pushing to do things is there too, even if it's kind of a thing which is my product that I'm in charge of. That kind of collaborative side helps there too.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of ways, if it had just been me, Monster of the Week just might have stayed as that original rulebook.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not necessarily a thing that I thought had to have expansions and supplements, but when ideas come in and they're like, this idea is really great, it'll make a great book. That's a cool thing to have.
Yeah. Whereas there doesn't seem to be any shortage of need for Shadowrun stuff, and I wonder whether you could talk a little bit, maybe, Grant, about the community, because we've heard that maybe there's a lot of feedback from community people saying, "Hey, we want this book, we want this thing." As far as Monster of the Week goes, I know I've got people telling me every 5 minutes, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool to bring this game back that you can't have reprinted because the license doesn't exist?" Whoops. But Shadowrun has a very interesting relationship with its fans, and I wonder whether you can say more about that in terms of the publisher side of it.
Yeah, that's a complicated complicated piece.
If you can, if
So
you can't, then don't worry.
I'll cover it in a couple of stages. So at one stage, I don't know who's been involved in the Shadowrun community, but they have a particular vibe to them, which I really like, which is that they're very passionate, and also if anything changes, that you hear about it consistently. The Shadowrun 6th edition is the current one out, and when it came out, everybody complained about it online, and it was almost as loud as the complaints when they moved from 4th to 5th edition, which is almost as loud as the complaints when they moved from 3rd to 4th, which it shows that people are engaging with the setting. They love the writing, they love the game, and they love it so much that when it changes, it feels like a big thing, which means that the community of people who have often stuck with the setting for 30 years or more generally has strong opinions, and there are I was going to say there are established places online where they all meet, but that's not as true.
Yeah.
What tended, Shadowrun in particular, went through a number of places where the community would build, it would grow, it would thrive, and then at some point it would fall over. There'd be a gigantic political outpouring, and then over here somewhere else other people would start building another community. So it wasn't really one community, but there were a number of them. And in my time before, during, and after my sort of pitching and entering into the publishing world, I was an active member of many of those forums, although to be fair, by the time I started writing, I had, I was out of my student phase. I didn't have as much free time around. I wasn't on the forums as much, but I was still there, looking and engaging in Reddit, and it wasn't Shadow Sea back there, but there were a number of forums that I like to keep my ear on, and it was good to have those connections in that you could feel what people wanted. As you said earlier, people were really hankering for this. You did have to look past the, they put out this book and it was all terrible, so now we want that book. So, and I think that part of it really is around making, what we're doing is we're producing stories and settings and material that people enjoy, that they want to incorporate into their games, and that means that they're coming into their lives, right? The stuff that we've written, an adventure that we've written, a setting, an item that we've put into the thing, it's all part of someone's life now, and that means it's important to have those connections to the fan community. So what that works on for the community of writers, because Shadowrun and Catalyst Labs have a number of Shadowrun and BattleTech and Leviathans, and they've just run a Frostpunk Kickstarter campaign. So look out for who might be in the author section of that a little bit. But what that means is they've got a stable of core writers and more infrequent writers, and they've got ways of connecting with them as well. And so, in addition to the community that we're building the actual products for, the books, we are also a community of writers ourselves, and there is a connection between those as well, right? Yeah, I have many thoughts on the connections between those, but I don't want to take up the whole thing. But it is really important, and all of the other authors, as well as myself, think about what people want.
Yeah.
The first book that I pitched was a book called Magical Societies, which is a small part of Shadowrun, where if you're a magic character, you can join the society for a small benefit. But people loved it, and that fed my view of what the community was after, because I saw what they reacted well to, I saw what they reacted poorly to. And so in my day job, I'm a business analyst, and one of the things that they do is they unpick what people say they want and what they actually want.
Oh.
And that has been interesting in terms of writing as well, because there have been a number of things that people have said they've wanted and they've sold poorly, and there's a number of things that people haven't said anything at all and they've sold like hotcakes. So it's
what's the whole adage? You like, I want it exactly as it was before, but different.
Yes. Yeah, I love it, but change it. Is also another way to do it, right? So yeah, it's connecting with the community is the only way that these large publishers continue to sell. If they didn't, then they wouldn't even exist.
I feel like one of the things that's interesting about the three of us is that we've got this interaction with communities in a different angle. Like, for example, Mike, you're talking about people who are coming in, having done a lot of work and fan stuff, and then sort of be incorporated. There's a Monster of the Week community that exists that is large enough, substantial enough that actually provides even further material down the road, which I'm sure you're seeing. The Shadowrun one is like a sort of a growing beast and comes sort of ebbs and flows, but it's still the work that I've been doing in the past, couple of decades has been going into communities which are often IP based, like their licenses, like there's the Firefly one, the Marvel one, and so on. You kind of become part of that group for a while you're doing your game, and then when you're done with whatever you're doing, you kind of leave it. I don't know whether the Cortex community is sort of sizable enough that would sort of amount to being about the same size as one of as other ones, but it's certainly grown over a while, and they kind of come along with me as I change entire different games and things. And what's this one? But I think it's that sort of feeling every time you launch something new and you're working on something new that you think, I hope there's a community out there that will support this and give me some feedback. And if it's like a TV or movie or book comic thing based thing, some of them are very hostile to you coming into the space, right? So what's it been like? Have you done anything outside of that, Michael?
In terms of other games or other community building?
What's it been like going from, I guess, super supportive one, which I guess the Monster of the Week one's super supportive. Anything like that?
Well, I have self-published a number of other games, and none of them have done remotely as well as Monster of the Week. I mean, admittedly, they're available in PDF only and things like that, so they're not likely to do as well as something that's out in the shops. But none of them have taken off so far, at least. One remains hopeful. And I've got some other things coming, which hopefully will make a bit of a bigger splash. But they're all kind of in different stages of almost done rather than ready. So I mean, the community thing's hard, I think, because this is kind of getting a bit away from publishers, but I guess, but like Monster of the Week, I think kind of was a bit more naturally a community building game because it's riffing off all those different IPs that people like without being any one of them in particular. So it kind of draws in people who are fans of the X-Files, people who are fans of Buffy, people who are fans of Supernatural, without much work from me having to push that, because it's kind of right there in the game.
Yeah.
And I think that worked really well, but it's kind of very much a feature of that in particular. Getting back to the publisher thing, like Evil Hat do quite a bit of marketing and stuff and getting it around, which helps. We don't do anything that much that's specifically for community building, although they do help out with, I mean, they do join in with giveaways and bundles and things. In fact, should we bring that up now?
Yeah.
Because one of the things that they're doing, they're supporting KiwiRPG Week with a bunch of giveaways, and for this stream, they're giving away on Roll20 a copy of the Monster Week rulebook and Tome of Mysteries. So I think in the background, someone is magically making that work for someone who is watching this to get a copy of it. So good luck to those of you listening.
Super magically supporting us behind the scenes with useful links and or giveaways.
And now I've forgotten what I was talking about before that.
I feel like the community thing is important for publishers, because that's really who buys the things that you're trying to sell, right? I guess what I was getting at was the sort of the closed loop of starting off in the community, sort of trying to find a way to get your stuff published, finding that place where you can be seen, having the content of your own out there that has to sort of at least be in front of someone's eyes. And then if there exists a place for these publishers to sort of like source their talent from or go into and notice that, then you have a stronger chance of being able to get sort of that inroad and finding that kind of like, I guess, the job market, right? Like, I think that if I was to right now want to work on some 5e stuff, having never done any D&D 5e publishing, if I was that kind of person, I would go to DM's Guild on drive-through. But even them, they're moving away from that to D&D Beyond now, right? So they're sort of like saying, oh, we're shifting our focus away from publishing on that, and now we want to do D&D Beyond. It'll be much better. That's not as easy, I don't think, for people to jump into, right? You can always go and publish your module, your sort of new class or whatever there, and get people to notice, but you're kind of at the whim of the publisher on their own portals. So I don't know necessarily, but I think that's kind of continues to be a strong thing. If there's no place for you to go to join that kind of community, join that kind of, whether it's designer communities or fan style things, then you may not be able to get that attention.
Yeah. Now, I think some people... go ahead.
I was going to say, I agree that for example, going to D&D Beyond is not ideal. It adds friction to the whole thing. But when I got in, there was no such thing as the DM's Guild, right? There wasn't an official place where you could put it up, and it's not necessarily in front of people, but if it goes gangbusters, then maybe people will notice. Shadowrun has got Hollow Streets is a similar thing, and so if you feel you want to publish a story, or if you want to publish an adventure or something, there is a way to do it. But also, I'm not sure if I pulled the thread completely out. Just because you've got a thing on one of those does not necessarily turn into a contract for writing another piece or anything like that. I think it can be good for building up your portfolio, for proving that you've got the chops, that you've got something there. But it feels like each step there's a little bit of risk and a little bit of luck.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because the risk for writing in a way is quite modest, in that, you know, if I spend 2 weeks writing 15,000 words on a thing, I could have been doing other things with that time, but once it's written, it's written, and I'm not going to lose anything. But there's also luck, right? You know, if you put it up and then it happens to drop at the same time as the new edition of D&D, or it's like no one's going to be looking at your stuff, and by the time the furor drops down, then nobody's going to remember. Your thing's going to be months old. It's going to so there is luck in all of this, and there is risk. So there is no one path. You have to kind of maybe to murder my analogy from earlier, maybe it's not a path through the woods, maybe it's slippery stepping stones, right? And sometimes you get part way out into the river and you just can't see the next step, and you take a leap of faith and sometimes you get wet.
What were you going to say, Mike? You had something to
well, I was going to say one thing we haven't talked about getting yourself published is like you can go look at a publisher and see if they've got submissions guidelines and just send them something, right?
Yeah, be proactive, right? Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't necessarily advise doing that if they don't have some submissions guidelines, and if they do have some, I would say definitely follow them exactly, right? Because a lot of these are going to have possibly hundreds, certainly dozens of things coming in, and so they're not really going to want to deal with if you've just thrown together a messy email and a draft, and so pay attention to what they ask. But yeah, though a lot of publishers have those. I know Evil Hat's got one. I'm not sure if it's open at the moment. I think they may have enough stuff in the pipeline, but it periodically is available. And I know there are a few other publishers who do have a kind of contact us for submissions this way, and we'll have a look at it. I mean, I don't think you can count on getting more than a no thanks, but it's another path,
Absolutely, Totaku with that, right? That's absolutely, and the other thing too, I know Mike, you said they could have dozens or potentially hundreds, but the thing is, you're competing against those dozens or hundreds for one or two or three kind of goes, but even if there's 100 things, there's probably 1,000 people who went, "Oh, I should do that," and never do.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
The number of times it's like, "Oh, I could absolutely do this." Oh, the people are, I'll just, but no, actually getting in and actually submitting and actually sending something to someone, as you say, Mike, maybe it's only a 2% chance or a 10% chance or whatever, but if you, what's the old phrase? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Correct.
So, and I think, but riffing on that slightly, I also think that emotionally, the time when you're putting out you've crafted this thing, you've spent months getting this piece, you haven't had any money to get someone to edit it, and you don't have connections yet, but you put this beautiful little piece out into the world, and then someone comes back with, "Nah." That's the moment where most people are very fragile and where you need to fortify up a little bit.
Yeah.
And because I think everybody's got a heartbreaker. Often the first one that you put in is perhaps more targeted towards what you want to publish than maybe what they want to put out into the world. And the people that can pick up those fragile glass pieces of their heart and put them back together and go, well, okay, so they didn't want this gigantic mecha book in their dystopian dark fantasy system.
Mhm.
Maybe I'll do some dystopian dark fantasy for them.
I
think
I was going to add, Grant, I have a policy for how I handle that, which maybe people will find useful, which is if I'm going to submit something like that, I make sure I know what I'm going to do if they say no. Like, even if that's, I'll just throw it up on Itch and Drive Through RPG as a PDF. It's kind of having if this doesn't work out, I've got another plan. Whatever that plan is, I think makes it a bit easier to handle.
And bear in mind that drinking and crying can be so if that's what you're thinking.
It's a fully valid response is to sort of go out in the town and say, "I'm going to get blotto tonight because no one wanted my mecha book." Should we pivot maybe a little bit and talk about okay, so say someone's found us, maybe we've gotten the attention of a publisher. What's that publisher and writer / designer / creator relationship like, and how do we sort of like best practice this in terms of like how do you think people should come to the table with that kind of thing? And it's very different because the different kinds of people in the world is the same as the different kinds of people who publish games. I mean, I've worked with several I would not say anyone that I've worked with has been the same, right? The relationship that I had with Margaret Weiss is different from the one that I had with John Nephew and Michelle Nephew at Atlas Games. Very different from the one I had at Fandom, which is a sort of big corporation who is way, way, way big. And then after that, Direwolf was different. They had bought a lot of stuff from Fandom, and I came with it. And so that relationship itself was like, this is the inherited content baggage slash whatever. And I think that your relationship with these different people, these publishers, is going to be different. But I think there should be some sort of best practice sort of things. Do you want to talk a bit about how to conduct yourself or how to approach those things?
I have thoughts. Mike, did you want to go first?
I don't need to, but why don't I? Because I've basically just got to talk about working with Evil Hat, and that's one approach. I suspect that they may be one of the better people to work with that are out there. Certainly, they're good collaborators, and I've enjoyed my time working with them and have no complaints. So the deal we've got for Monster of the Week stuff is Evil Hat will do the development work, pay for and run the development work, printing, buying art, Kickstarters and crowdfunds, and all that kind of thing. Get it into distribution after I've written the game, and we then split the profits 50-50. So it's like basically they pay all the upfront costs, and once we're making a profit, we share it. It's slightly more complicated for the supplements because all of my supplements, in fact, the main ones, Tome of Mysteries, Codex, and Hunter's Journal, they're all profit share of the creators. So basically, when I get my quarterly payment from Evil Hat, I then pay out chunks of it to the different people who worked on all those books for their shares. We've also had other people who, like for some of the stretch goals for the crowdfunds, there were like individual bits of work for those, which were one payment, like we'll pay you X money, give us 3,000 words of a mystery or a character or something like that. But yeah, they basically handle all the business side of it and let me just write games. And that's been a fantastic relationship for over 10 years now. So it's good. Amusingly, I'd been working with them for over 10 years before I actually met any of them in person. Which is kind of a strange thing to think about, that it kind of had become like the main part of my income and so on. But I did actually get to the United States to Big Bad Con in 2024 and got to meet Sean and Fred and Chris Viana and a few others there. So that was pretty cool. And highly recommend working people you can actually meet. Although it may not be that easy in this industry.
Also, right now, I mean, it has changed. It was no brainer for me to feel like I was just going to pop on a plane and fly to the US for a convention. I think that's less lucky at the moment.
Yeah, no, I don't think I would go there now. No.
Yeah, I think we are finding out too that the more, especially after COVID, that the world is a whole lot less you must be here to work and more about you must be online to collaborate and be part of it. And so it's actually kind of become easier for us here in Aotearoa, I think, than it was before. But I certainly don't think that it's gotten any easier in terms of like you want to meet.
There are some notes of hope, though. I mean, Chaosium are bringing their Chaosium Con to Wellington this year, which will be fantastic. And that's a chance to meet some people who are pretty big players in the industry.
Yeah, I'll be there. So if anyone wants to hang out,
me too.
Local conventions, New Zealand's conventions are actually quite interesting because they remind me a lot of the smaller local ones in the States, where you would show up somewhere in some state and say, hey, whatever. I find them sometimes to be a whole lot more rewarding and productive in terms of a published relationship than you would be if you went to somewhere like Gen Con or even Origins, because those places, the publisher there is so incredibly busy and stressed out that your chances of having a proper conversation with them, if you haven't booked it months in advance, are very, very slim. Yeah. Unless you're best mates with people who run it or whatever, that's a different story. But if you manage to find someone, like if you went to Chaosium Con, you would very highly likely be able to talk to people who actually work there and can talk about that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's for sure.
Well, and I guess on that note, and tying back to that earlier piece about working with it, I don't remember if I am exactly or not, but I may be the only freelancer for Shadowrun that's in the Southern Hemisphere. And I have never met in person any of the, although Rob Boyle, one of the owners of Catalyst, did come to New Zealand. He got in touch and said, "Hey, we want to come and connect to our people. Where would you like to go?" And it's like, well, I would love to meet you here in Wellington, but there's a thriving BattleTech scene in Auckland. You need to go. You need to go there, and so near miss. But yeah, I have not met any of my collaborators. But that said, it is also quite neat being part of a community. So we've got our little communications app that we talk on, and there's Shadowrun and BattleTech have quite a big European following, particularly in Germany. They do their own stuff over there as well, and almost all of the freelancers are on our particular communications app. And and it's good to have a talk with them, but also once you've published once or twice, or the way that it worked for me is once I'd published once or twice, the lead developer said, "Okay, look, you're kind of in. Just join up. We'll when we've got upcoming products, we'll stick them in the Discord. In the communications app, and then think about what you'd like to do, pitch for all or part of it, and if you've got things that you would like to pitch for that isn't part of that, talk to us and we'll have a go." And so it means that I joined an online community of freelancers and creators and reps from the business as well. It kind of felt like being invited into into the fancy club, which is quite nice, until you realize that most of what freelance authors do in their free time when they talk is say, "Hey, you remember this thing that we got published in 1987? It's probably a bit problematic. Has anyone got a problem with me changing it to this?" And then you have 90% of people say, no, that's fine. And then one person say, "Well, actually, that turned into a thread that spanned 17 years." And you need to.
Yeah.
So it is quite nice having that. Once you've made it in Catalyst, you get sort of into that sort of milieu and enjoy talking with similar people. I think I'm on 3 or 4 groups with various fractions of authors doing bits and pieces, and it's really satisfying. Occasionally people say, "Hey, look, I've got this idea. Would anyone like to have a look at it?" And you know that anyone who's there has published, and that you might or might not like their thing, but at least they've reached that threshold, and they've I don't want to say it's like joining a fraternity or anything, or a fraternal lodge or anything, because it's a whole lot less organized than that. But it is nice to have that, it used to be that they'd email out everyone on an email list saying, "Hey, look, we've got this product coming up. We think we'll need this many characters and this many adventures and this many background pieces and 4,000 or 5,000 words worth of introductory fiction." And so at the moment I'm going through a bit of a quiet thing. I'm doing a bit of study instead, and that's sucking up most of my time. But it's good to having my finger on the pulse and saying, "Oh, okay, so next year there's probably going to be this kind of thing happening. That means that maybe I should get an idea or two about this other thing that I've had on the boil for a while."
Yeah, I sometimes think it's a little bit like too when we're working in the film industry, where you're going on a press tour for a movie that you made 3 movies ago, right? we're all if we're working for something, if we're currently working with a publisher that it's not out yet, right? It's foremost in our minds. We're working on a thing that has not sort of materialized into the fans, haven't seen it yet, and yet they've got something else that's just launched, which they're all marketing the heck out of, and there's feedback to that which you can do nothing about because that's
Mhm,
a
mhm.
couple products back. You can only focus on what you're currently doing, and I think there's that way to try to, you know, pay attention to that, but also you should not, right? Because I mean, it's not your area anymore. It's the marketers, it's the publishers, it's their thing. But I think that's a really interesting thing about the fractions and things because there's also an aspect too of there's the kind of collegial level of designers you might end up becoming friends with who may work in different companies, and you can do shop talk and back forth, and you can sort of say, hey, what's the cool thing happening here? But then you've got to kind of go back to that somewhat protected group and say, okay, so we're working on this one book, which I can't talk to my other buddies who work for other publishers about. Yeah, so there's some hat wearing and some group jumping, which I think may be a thing that happens.
Yeah.
Um,
Also, that
yeah.
thing you touched on about time is also a big thing. Like, if you do something big for a publisher, like it's going to go at its own timeline, which is probably a slow one. You know, it's if you're writing little games that you put on itch, you can like put them up in a week.
Yeah.
But if you're going to publish something with someone who's going to print it and get into distribution, that might take 2 years.
Yeah.
Right. From when you've got the finished written, first draft done to turning up. It might take more than 2 years. So yeah, there's also an element of having to be patient and just let things go at the speed they go at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. It's especially true if you didn't actually happen to get something immediately after, and now you're just waiting for people to see the thing you made,
Yep.
a year ago, right?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Well, I think the first couple of times I submitted, it was like that because the writing is one of the very earliest parts,
Mm-hmm.
right? They commission art based on the writing. They commission, there's other people possibly contributing to your thing. There's the schedule of other products that they need to fit into, and I can't. It can sometimes. It's not usually over a year nowadays, but it has been in the past that it's been a year later. That and it's like, oh, I get an email from my Drive RPG Geek page saying, "Oh, there's a new thing." It's like, "Is there? What have I done?" It's like, "Oh no, it's finally come out."
When I was at Atlas Games, Ars Magica was one of the things that was still being made. The 5th edition of Ars Magica was a product line about 50 books. It was so huge. And they've obviously recently done like a Kickstarter for sort of presenting the definitive edition of Ars Magica. It's really great. Or Magica if you want to be a pedant. But the thing that I always found fascinating about that product line was that the line editor, David Chart, had books in development 2, 3, sometimes even 3 years before the publishing date, because he was very much into this playtest this like 2 or 3 times. Let's get this thing done. I would be getting finished versions of this that had been edited already and completely done, and the last thing we had to do was do layout, which is what my job was, is to do layout and art direction. And if I found something that I thought, oh, this may be a problem with this error here, the first instinct I had was that, hey, we should fix this. And then I'm like, okay, this has been in so many hands already. Surely someone has noticed that this character has 3 noses, Nope. There's never a point when you have to stop, working on things. But it just the timeline of that was crazy. And we would have these emails coming through saying, here's the current stage of where these different books are at, the current process, this thing's in layout, this thing is in editing, this thing's in second playtest round, this thing I'm getting calls for writers. I'm like, that's never going to come out. The book's like 2 years from now, whatever. So it is, the publishing area is a huge shift from if you're doing the self-publishing thing, when, like you said, Mike, you can just put it up there and sell it. You're going to have to get used to this idea that things take the time and it take a while.
You could remind me.
Sorry, you go, Mike.
You reminded me of one of the other problems of doing a big project like this that comes to print over a long period. When you finally have the print copy in your hand and you open it up the first time, you are bound to spot a typo.
Yep.
No matter how many editing passes it's been through.
Yeah. There will be a typo. And you cannot blame the editor or proofreaders or anybody, because
no,
everyone saw that and said, yep, seems good.
Actually, if I could just jump in there as well, one of the things, because we're talking about integrating lots of different work and art and things, one of the things that I have found has set me in good stead amongst the other freelancers that I've worked with is I tend to, I have good work habits. And I think that if you're just starting out in this industry, you might underestimate how important that is. So, for instance, if I promise you 5,000 words in a month, I will have you 5,000 words in that month, or I will have told you 2 weeks ago that it's going to be a week late, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I have found that everyone's different, but a lot of the other freelancers that Catalyst has worked with that I've been part of, the ones that have lasted the distance, the ones that have been in the same channels for years, are the ones that turn in roughly on time, roughly to speak, good work.
Yeah.
And not to say it's perfect and everyone has problems, but if you let people know ahead of time and you say, hey, look, I've got this family emergency. It's going to be, it's going to take 3 days. I'm going to be 3 days late. Or if you say, hey, look, I'm a month out and I'm not going to make it.
Yeah.
Can you help? Then the people that you're working with will well appreciate it. Not to say that it can't be exciting the other way. There was one product 5 or 6 years ago where I don't think he'd mind me saying, but Jason, the line manager for Shadowrun, said, "Hey, look, we've had someone pull out. We need 15,000 words by Friday. Can you help?" and 4 or 5 people all added in, and I wound up chucking in about 4,000 words or something like that. And it was a last minute sort of cover your ass sort of thing. So it's not like there's no way to recover from it.
Yeah.
But if you, the writer, can reduce the blood pressure of the person who's getting your writing, if you can make it easy for them, and if you can keep them in the loop so that they don't have to worry, then you will become their friend almost by default.
Yeah.
It becomes much easier.
I think it requires a level of discipline that most of us don't have naturally. Right?
Well, yeah. Well, maybe. So, or just, I mean, that may be right. I don't think of myself as a particularly disciplined person, but I have a full-time non-writing job. I've got a family with a couple of kids. As I said, I'm doing a little bit of study. I do house maintenance and look after other people and all sorts of things. And so I don't actually have a lot of time to do writing. And so when I am writing, I just sit down for half an hour, an hour and a half a night and churn through something like 500 or 1,500 words every single night until I get something done. And that was hard for me because the first couple of times it was all about churning it all out at the last minute, and that was stressful for me. But I find if I go in and I write half a page a day of solid work, then my life becomes easier and everyone is happier.
Yeah, I was going to say too, it's not necessarily that you have to be able to work really quickly and do things on a tight time budget. Probably it's more important that you know what your work habits are, so that if you're talking to your editor or your developer, you can say, oh, this piece will take me X, whatever will take you, and be open about if there's anything that might delay it. Because it's not really likely to be important that it gets done by a particular day, but it is important that the project as a whole knows where things are.
Yeah, I agree completely.
I was going to say, is there anything else we want to throw out there before? Are there any questions coming in, Mr. Cool Person background? No. Our viewers are like, yes, just keep talking about stories. We want to hear stories.
Oh, I've got another bit of advice for people who are working collaboratively.
Yeah.
Which this is not directly publisher based, but this is a good one to know. Is if your work is being edited, it's really useful to be able to accept the editor's comments, think about them, and reply to them. You don't necessarily have to agree with them, but like having worked with a number of collaborators on the different Monster of the Week books, the difference between people who get defensive and find it hard to react to editorial comments and people who go, okay, I'll think about that and come back with a response is pretty big. And you've got to remember, if an editor's coming back to your work, even if their comments seem like blunt or mean, they're trying to get the text as good as they can.
I'll just to answer that. My experience is actually that's not the way that Catalyst works. Catalyst, you turn in your draft, and it's theirs now. Right? You see it a few months or a year later, and it's like, oh, I didn't write that, did I? And you flip through it.
I feel it's a similar sort of place. You do have to accept that you don't own the work, right? In that place.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the big differences. I know we weren't talking about sort of self-publishing much here, but it's one of the differences that I felt keenly working for a larger publisher in Wellington from the 2000s through to the, I guess, 2020s, because there were many people like Mike and like a number of people around here were self-publishing and were putting their own things, and they got their own book that they made with their own two hands. Whereas I felt that I was not poetically, but I was sort of tipping words into somebody else's recipe, and then I stood back while someone else, I could push the metaphor and say, made the stew and served it up. And it's like, well, I don't really have any control over any of that. But I know that I can write, and I know that my writing is decent, and I know that people are and that's part of what people are taking. So yeah, it was a little bit. I don't think my editors have ever change the character or change the meaning of what I've done, but sometimes there have been moderately large edits where it's often to tie in with other pieces of work in the same book or on the same plot line or whatever, and and I don't find out about it. I don't know until afterwards.
I think it's almost universally like when I worked with Margaret Weiss was an editor. One of her things that she did a lot more than even writing books was she edited back in the day, and she always and she has a good working relationship with her her fiction editors. Whenever she has one, she normally keeps them for years and years and years and doesn't want to change them because they have that kind of rapport with the person who's turning your novel into a finished product. And editors in fiction are huge in terms of their control and shaping. They're the ones who bring your book into the publisher. They're the ones who make it what it is. I think her comment was, you need to forget any kind of sense of pride about keeping it pristine, because the editor will chew it up and spit it out and turn it into hack it to pieces and make it whatever it is, and you will be better for it, right? And I think that came across a little bit sort of like, oh, that's a bit mean, but actually it's great because I can tell you, I have this thing. I worked with editor Amanda Valentine, a good friend of mine, for a long, long time, and I always said, if you liked any of the stuff that I wrote, you can thank her. If you didn't like anything that I wrote, it's my fault, right? She made my work better. I made it worse if it was bad. So, have a question here I want to throw out to it because we should talk about this. It's fun. It's what in a publisher or editor brings out the best in you, and that was kind of like leapfrogging from this thing. I think that the best work I've ever done has been something that has been workshopped enough that we get it to the point where I feel really good about it. My voice kind of has come out into that text, but it is a better version of what I originally wrote. What do you folks think about your own experiences?
For me, it would be quite similar. I'm thinking of working with Steve Hickey as editor on the first edition of Monster of the Week and the revised edition with Evil Hat as well, because he knew the work I've been doing quite well. We're friends as well. But as a game editor, he really deeply engaged with everything that was going on in Monster of the Week, and his feedback was not just on the text, but like how the game works, what things it needed to include, and things like that. And I think that intensely collaborative editing is incredibly valuable if you can find it.
Yeah, and obviously anything that happened to you, you don't know about because it's in the wood chipper, right? But what is that? What's the best in you working for that different environment, like the different kind of process? What's made you want to try and do a better job?
Well, I think, from my point of view, I think that there's been a couple of things that have brought out the best of me from my editors, right? The first one is when they said yes. It's like, you're what? Okay, this is great. But I think after I started writing a bit, having the editor come, being a bouncing board, like editors are super busy, line developers are super busy, and they don't have a lot of time. But reasonably early in my development, I'll often go, okay, I've got this clash here. I thought this was going to work. I can't think of a way to make it work. And you boil it down to a 2-line question or something and say something like, hey, look, I've got this problem here. I think the issue is this. I can't do that. What would you feel about option A, option B, or option C? And of course, you dive too deep, right? You go in and you develop option, but then you cut it down and they come back and say, the least helpful answer from that is whatever you think is best.
Oh, no.
But the most helpful, and full credit to Jason and the Catalyst team, he often comes back with, hey, look, I see the problem. And I see your solutions, and I think it's going to be option B, but maybe mix in this thing, because one of the things that I think maybe I haven't emphasized as much in this conversation is almost everyone that I deal with started in a similar place to me.
Yeah.
Almost everyone that I deal with, maybe not necessarily freelancers, but maybe they were, they've been staff writers, but they've all been people who have been writing role-playing stuff. And there is less of a difference between anyone in the audience today and an editor than you might think.
Yeah.
There is no hooded order of monks that you join when you become a published author. What you do is you find that you move from the room where there are all the people say, oh, I wish I could get published, to the room of all the people say, hey, I just got published. Right? And so to answer that, bringing it back a little bit to your question of what they brought out the best in me was just understanding that it's not as hard or as rigid a structure around you. And it's okay to say, hey, look, I've got a problem with this, or this isn't working, or can you help me? Or fire out into the channel, hey, look, this particular character's woven into a million things and I'll never be able to disentangle it. Do you think they'd ever buy this kind of motorcycle? And so breaking down that anxiety wall that you might have is one of the best things that an editor can do. Did for me, rather. Yeah. That's my experience.
That's fun. I really love that the comment about how they've been there in the same sort of place as you. I think that is one of those things that we can all sort of like appreciate, is that if you're working for tabletop publishers, everyone who works there either has played those games, has played games similar to it, is deep in those same sort of weeds. I think there was a point where someone had said that what we really want out of this team is we all want to make a good game. So we're not working in some sort of like horrible, menacing, you'll be brought for judgment, and we will tell you how badly your writing is, etc. They want your writing because it's part of the game. You want the editing to be good. You want the art director to understand what you've just done and make good art for it. One of the missteps that I had at one point when I was doing some fiction writing for Wizards of the Coast, I did a Dragonlance novel, and the front cover was painted, and I said, that is not the person this book's about. Like this image, this picture is someone else, because my character didn't look like that. And it wasn't until I actually talked to the artist at a convention later on that they told me I was never given a description of this character. And I'm like, oh no. Because he felt terrible. He's like, I would have not done that. It didn't. I still thought the cover was cool. I thought that the book was great in terms of that thing, but it made me realize that there are times I've worked closely with people who say, we're going to do this piece on this one page. Can you say more about this thing you've done? Come ask you as the writer or as someone who is working on this, give us an art order description. And I think that's one of those things, if you're working with a publisher, if you've especially got a good art director, they want that kind of information because it helps them make a better product that helps tie things together. And so it's a good sign too. So
I agree with that. Also, it is wonderful working with artists, isn't it? I remember in my earlier pieces, you give your little art blurb for, the editor come back and said, we've got a half-page illustration we can put in here, and you say, great, I want this scene, and you do a description, and they send it in, and they send it back saying, are you sure? Because that sounds okay, but this other bit sounds a lot more exciting. Are you overlooking? The other thing is that artists, just to digress slightly, artists are a little bit like authors, with a very different specialty. And the number one complaint that I've heard from artists is, they're just told to go forth and do something, and it's like, well, that doesn't help. And so. And nowadays, I do a very bad illustration saying, well, okay, two characters, and maybe they look a bit like this, and there's big hair, and there's a magic thing surrounding them, and that sort of stuff. And it looks like, I've got the proud art skills of about a 6-year-old, so I can. So I'm not going to show you any of my art, but it comes out, and the artists say this is amazing, and they make changes and they do their interpretations and stuff, but going all the way back to how you work with them, contributing to artists by saying, hey, look, this is my vision for the piece, and maybe it looks a bit like this. It gives them the leap up that you would have wanted by a good description for the art that you want. And weirdly tying in with the sort of, it's not mine anymore, because once I've done the art description, I don't find out until the art comes back, whether it's been changed or what.
Do you ever get that stuff shared with you? I know Evil Hat shares everything. When the hey, look at this cool picture, we've all got this picture, but do you think, like, I don't know, Catalyst sort of says, by the way, I know you wrote this thing 6 months ago, here's this picture, or do you have to wait until the book comes out?
So Catalyst are pretty good. I'm not going to go into sort of exactly how they do it, but they've got a website where you go in as part of a project, right? And often the first thing you see is, hey, here's my text, and then you say, whoops, I forgot to format it in the format. Here's the actual text, and then you see people. It's really satisfying. Say, okay, well, here's my first editing pass, and I can't touch it anymore. It's not mine.
Right.
And then you see the art director go through, well, here are my thoughts about this, and you can add to the conversation, but it's not yours anymore. It feels, I don't know. It feels like you've just made a beautiful car and sold it to someone, and they've entered a demolition derby, right? It's coming out more exciting and less smooth than you put it in.
Yeah. Or it's like you've got a really amazing, like, this is my my sort of late model Ferrari, and you've just painted it sort of neon green and put stickers on it.
There you go.
Yeah. You're like, all right, I guess it looks cool, but it's not what I had initially thought it would be.
Yeah. I'll also say, Cam, although Evil Hat do share everything, I don't actually usually see the art beforehand, because it's like the last thing that goes into layout. So
That is true.
that, like, basically the art's, like, the moment it's art complete, it goes to the printer. So what I get is usually, well, I get to see the art direction document long in advance and contribute to that. And then I'll see, like, when the fastest artists have done a bit of work, and that goes into a preview document. So I'll see like a third of the artwork.
I hear you. I've been so often, I guess, in the last few positions I've held in companies with publishers, a lot of my stuff as a creative director, I get to see everything all happening all at once. And I forget sometimes that we don't always share everything with people because there's no reason not to in some cases. Because, like, hey, everyone, look at this cool picture we've just did. It's great. But it isn't like, hey, everyone, go through every single image and give me your feedback. No one has time for that, right? That doesn't.
Yeah. Like I say, I don't think it's anything except the people who are doing the work being too busy to share everything.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah.
I would also say that depending on your background, some of the methods for interaction might require a little bit more technical knowledge than others. So I'm part of the development website. It's not difficult. There's not a lot there, but there is a tiny little learning curve at the start for understanding how things work and how to share files and things.
Right.
And if you're in a situation like that, then step one is to go look at their help page and read up, because people are going to assume that you know things. And if you need to set a reminder to yourself or an alarm when someone replies or whatever, then that's the sort of stuff that they all kind of learnt over the course of half an hour 5 years ago, and aren't going to think to share with new people necessarily.
You do bring up an interesting thing, and this is maybe something we could talk a little bit about, is that the specific business culture of a different publisher and how they change. Some of them are a whole lot more slapdash than others, and some of them are quite rigid because they've been doing the same cool thing for the last 10, 15 years, and since it's always worked, there's no reason for them to change it. Like, no one's going to update to Slack because they've always liked this other thing. Basecamp's been fine for us. Why would we ever change it? I think, I've worked for publishers sometimes where they say we're doing everything for this method. I'm like, that's so arcane and no one understands it. Why don't we try this? And they're like, no, that's just not how it works, right? Whereas you could have a little bit more of a flexible kind of style in terms of some publishers that, we all have seen that we think that Discord is a great place to do things. So now we're going to do all our chats and things on Discord as opposed to, sending things out through Messenger or whatever. All of that to say, I think that when you get some sort of gig with a publisher, you have to onboard yourself as much as you can to figure out what is the culture here, what is it that I can and can't do, and where is my input not necessary. How do you feel that kind of thing influences what you do, though? I mean, the culture of the company, the culture of the environment, and that sort of stuff.
Well, I can jump in, talk about working with Evil Hat. Like, part of the thing that works for me partnering with them is that I do get on with them. I feel like we're quite similar people with similar values. And that's kind of been one of the things that's been kind of constantly great about working with them, and why I've kept with them. And I presume why they've stuck with me. So yeah, that cultural, like, being the same sort of people, being interested in the same sort of games and way of doing things, I think very, very, very important. Hard to judge before you try working with someone, though.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'd agree with that, and I would also say that in terms of the systems, you were talking about how some things were really archaic and interesting choices. Just for a moment, if you close your eyes and you just visualize a room full of authors who have day jobs, who may or may not be technical people,
Mm-hmm.
who may or may not have any time, who may or may not have any family, who may have once been technical people, but that was 10 or 15 years ago.
Yep.
And then those are the people who are making decisions about the systems that you use. Okay, so
Yep.
please, you know, I if you're new, if you're getting in that, maybe you're in a technical thing, maybe you know about all kinds of content management systems and all kinds of things, that's fantastic. But the people that you're dealing with are overworked, and almost nobody has time to pay down technical debt on any of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I would encourage gentle tolerance where it's possible,
Mm-hmm.
and polite suggestions, and with a plan of implementation if you've
Yeah.
got another idea.
Yeah. No, also, and like, you know, it's the whole thing. Like, you sometimes when I realize you should probably stay in your lane, you know, when it comes to aspects of how the company is run. Unless they have a sign up saying, please tell us your suggestions for how we can do better. Maybe you don't have to flag them on that and say, why do you guys use this? It's stupid. No one who does that is good. You're like, well, that's cool. Thank you for your work.
Yes, yes, yes. There is probably no easier way to quit working than to just come in and start complaining about everything. It's like,
Yeah.
where there are genuine complaints, they already know,
Right.
and where there are not genuine complaints, you're probably not had any.
Yeah. I think, if I remember, there was one person we had as a freelancer, some company, I don't know, not saying names or anything, but they came in and said, I have some strong thoughts about your logo. And I'm like, which logo? Company logo? No, we're not. It's not a thing you have anything to say about. Like, oh, well, I just thought you could change the colors. And like, no, no good. Yeah. So I think that's. I don't know what else do we want to sort of share with people. I think that it's been really good to kind of communicate a little bit about this. It's such a strange thing because self-publishing is its own special kind of
Yeah.
practice. Oh yeah, we got to talk about this too. So yeah, and actually this kind of ties in. So self-publishing is something that you are kind of in charge, right? These decisions you make, these stupid logos you make for your company, these, you know, that's all you. But one of the other things that I think we've all probably had some kind of relationship with in the past is the NDA. Like, if you're going to work for a publisher, they may have you sign a non-disclosure agreement or some other kind of working agreement that says, do not go later on a panel and talk about how much we suck, because it would be bad also. But normally it's about, don't share, you know, the personal correspondence, don't share the documents, don't share this other stuff. That's pretty common business practice, right? But you want to say anything about anything? I don't know if you've even signed one. I think that what was it when Fred once posted things saying, we want you to talk about stuff
Yeah.
if you're a playtester.
Yeah,
Almost like,
no, Evil Hat have never asked me to sign an
yeah,
NDA for anything I've worked on with them.
yeah. But there's must be NDAs like lock solid at Catalyst for things, clearly.
Well, so without again going into the sordid history, there have been a few historic incidents at Catalyst which have suggested that maybe it's a good idea. They were, let me be super clear, they were really relaxed and pretty slack on the whole thing when early days. But then there were a couple of moments when it became obvious that people were sharing things that were in development, and they were, you know,
Yeah.
putting it out to the community, and the reasons were their own. But the effect of it was that people had time to build up a negative marketing campaign
Mhm.
and reduce the sales of books and things.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that's likely to be a common thing, and you would normally deal with that by just not working with the person who's sabotaging your product line, right? It's like, oh, you're doing that? No. But they did eventually get an NDA,
Mhm.
and so I have signed an NDA around in development stuff.
Yeah.
So in case there's things where we're trialing something and it could undergo changes before it gets published. I think that's probably a sensible one. I've got non-disclosure agreements around specific money amounts. Although I will say that large publishers often don't. There's not many people that can make their life make their entire income be a freelancer. There's NDAs around. I can't remember, but basically, the NDA that I signed was effectively, don't. Yeah, if you find dirty laundry within the house, don't shake it outside, right? And it sometimes rubs me up the wrong way, right? My initial instinct is, well, I tend to be quite a sharing person. I tend to be a person who would like to build vibe and buzz in the community just by saying, hey, look, next week this is going to happen. But also, by the same token, I realize that a lot of freelancers also get quite excited and they can say things like, hey, I've got this amazing book, you're going to love it, it's coming out soon. And then there's an art delay, or they need to put off publishing for a month, or someone puts something into the book which, in retrospect was a really poor choice, and so they had to do an editing hatchet job for a moment, and the upshot is it still got published, but it got published in 9 months instead of 2 months, and you've led on the community, and there's a feeling, there was no explicit promise, but there's a feeling of a broken promise. And so while I am not a person who would naturally gravitate towards an NDA, I recognize the use and the value that they have in this circumstance.
Yeah. I feel like you cut to the heart of it. Yeah. What were you saying?
I was going to say on that delay topic, although I haven't signed an NDA, when we've got projects on the go at Evil Hat, like we do agree, like, not to talk about release dates or anything until it's locked in for exactly that reason, because that's something where if you jump out, this is almost done, it's gonna be there in 3 weeks, and it isn't, people can get very angry.
They will. I think fans sometimes sort of listen to everything you say in post and follow it, and they sort of bake it into the reality of how things are going. And if you leak something like, I don't know, hey, cool thing, we've got this new feature that's coming out that you're gonna love, it's all about mass combat, and the next book comes out, there's no mass combat in it, then you get forum posts about the lies of the company and how they sort of are misleading us. 2 books later, mass combat comes out, which was what you were talking about, but they didn't know that. I think that's the kind of thing where you want to be very respectful, not just of the internal workings of the company, but also their image and how they're trying to portray themselves, I guess, to the world. There's a definite influence you can have as a freelancer on that if you just start talking about stuff.
And I would also say, as kind of a writing freelancer as opposed to a self-publisher or a creative director, the amount that I can see is very different from the amount that other people can see. And so for me, when I turn in my 15, 20,000 words or whatever, or sometimes 5,000 words, it's fine, whatever. To me, it's done, and I can understand emotionally, I can understand that there are editing passes, and there's coherency passes, and there's art direction, there's layout, there's final layout, there's whoops, we've screwed up a name, there's all that kind of stuff. But in my mind, my piece is kind of done. And so it's like, well, why isn't it out tomorrow? And so I don't know that NDAs are the right way to do it, but they are one way to help control the feelings there.
We had a Dragonlance book that came out that was originally going to have 4 quite large chapters in it, and the 4th chapter was cut from the book because they ended up figuring out that the page count was going to be not right, so they sort of jiggled things around a bit, and then they cut the last chapter. We had written that, we'd had people write for it, we've had people design for it, and we'd gotten art for it, but we just didn't put it in the book. So the plan was later on, let's put that out as a bonus sort of content PDF. And there was a lot of strong feelings about that from the point of view of both the fans and the people who contributed to it, saying, well, I kind of wanted it in the book. It would have been cool to have my work in this thing that got published. But in the end, it was decided that was some of the use content. And that will happen, I think. If you're working with a publisher, they may make these decisions, these specific calls to chop your stuff out. I contributed to was the Coast book. At the time when they had different publishers doing their work kind of like on a sort of a work share thing, like Green Renine did that one with the Underdark. That was, I contributed to that, but a lot of my content wasn't ever in the book. They just decided, during development, we're going a different direction. We didn't need this sort of thing in the adventure. It's going to be somewhere else instead. So all my work was gone. I was still paid for it. I didn't mind, but there is a point of view that sometimes you have as a contributor. We think, oh, I kind of wish all that work I did on that one book that I was thinking about, where's it gone, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, that's it. It can come back the other way, though, right?
Mhm.
So I submitted, I got paid for it, but I submitted a mission called Get Bento, which was a Shadowrun mission in Japan, and it was run at, I think, Origins in the US,
Mhm.
as part of a suite of other missions that were being run at the time, but it was run in a pre-published format,
Oh,
and then immediately after that, there was a change of the person running missions, and there was some sort of money hiccup, and it's like, oh, okay, well, is my mission ever going to get published? And yeah, so and then 3.5 years later, I got a notification. Guess what's being published? and so you can go to drive through, download Get Bento, and find out what you're going to do at a Greek restaurant in Japan if you want to. But I guess the seed here is, even if all hope seems lost for this content that you've produced, it can come back.
yeah.
Yep.
It's on someone's
Partly,
hard drive,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. And especially if they've paid you for it, and this is the whole thing about work for hire, right? Which almost every freelance contract is. If you've been paid for it, then it's theirs now. You made it for them. They can do whatever they like with it. And if they hold it for 3 years and then publish it somewhere else, cool. You know,
Yeah.
just don't make a fuss necessarily about the way that they do it, unless you don't want to see it ever published, because that would be a fun thing to like. Well, we're deleting it. Goodbye. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
we have a note here that would be fun to ask. Let's talk about a little about the sensitivity readers and how that works on game publishing. That's a more and more common thing that has happened over the last few years, as we realize that no, you can't just say all kinds of horrible things and publish things that are grossly nasty. It's useful to get your content looked at by someone who is independent from your publisher or your writing team. And it's also a good idea to have someone catch that stuff before it goes out past a certain stage. Have you worked with sensitivity readers in the past, either of you? And if so, what's the
Yeah,
experience
I
been?
have.
Well, I'll go first then, because I haven't directly worked with it. However, one thing to note about Shadowrun is particularly the early editions had a number of really problematic things in them. A lot of the depictions of First Nations people in the US,
Hmm.
there were a lot of problems with that, and Mexican people. That I think that they did some good things with using species as a proxy for race to discuss that sort of thing, but there's still a number of issues with that early work, and I understand that they are working with people better now, but I don't see it. It goes through an editing pass, and my understanding, I'm not sure if this is correct, I'm not sure if it's the standard process, but my understanding is if the editor goes, or maybe, then they bring someone in.
Yeah.
But I, as I said, I can't speak to that really, because a lot of that is out of my hands at that point.
Yeah. Mike?
Yeah, so Evil Hat makes quite a lot of use of sensitivity readers these days, and I've worked directly with some on both Codex of Worlds and the Hunter's Journal / Survival Kit projects. I've found it really valuable. It's a really good extra perspective to have, and I try and treat it like I do editorial comments. Like I say, when sensitivity reader questions something, asks you to explain it or change it, they're again trying to make everything better, and that's the way to look at it. In particular, I'll shout out the sensitivity reader that Evil Hat found me for my Bone Spear, like Stone Age Monster of the Week setting. They actually found a guy who is an anthropologist who studies shamanic and animist cultures today to comment on it. And he had such good feedback through that whole thing of, because I mean, I'm coming at it as very much an amateur, read popular history about this sort of thing and use it to create a fantasy world. But having someone who really knew their stuff come in and comment on it was fantastic.
So you're saying that just looking at Wikipedia is not enough sometimes, Mike?
Yeah, that's right. But more broadly, like, I don't think I've had an experience with sensitivity reader that hasn't improved the text when going through with it. I think it's a very valuable thing to do. We have tended to do it where, as we're finalizing the project, someone will say, oh, this area might be problematic, so let's get someone else to take a look at it. So it's bits and pieces rather than someone trying to look at a whole thing. But that seems to work very well.
Yeah, I've had work in the past I didn't write, but I was in my status, sort of my role as a creative director. A lot of the stuff you do is making decisions about what's going into a book and what's staying out of it. I've had some occasions when we've had someone look at some text or content, and I said that everything about this is a problem. We can't really do this in a way that either keeps fidelity to what this person wanted to have as content, while stripping out anything which was a problem. And that's sometimes how it works out. You feel bad because, well, we didn't get this adventure, or we didn't get this one setting, or we didn't get the thing. But it's to the betterment of you as a publisher and as a person who contributes and creates stuff. It's like if you have to weigh up, well, we don't get this one part of this book published because it was problematic, versus we didn't offend literally like an entire nation about that kind of stuff is very important. And I think I as a sort of a cis het white man, I don't really have a whole lot to say about a lot of this stuff that isn't better said by people who are not looking like me. And so I've always deferred to people who have contributed in some way, either sort of their thoughts about things in terms of what kind of content to do, or also like, hey, we should review this a bit more strongly about this from the angle of someone who may read this and go, this isn't representation, this is co-opting my culture, right? So yeah, very, very important aspect of that. But again, if you're just writing for it, you don't necessarily always have that role, and you're not part of that decision making. But I think it ties into the whole thing of not being upset when someone changes your work.
100%. Yeah.
All right, are we coming? I think we're probably coming up on some time that we want to kind of start wrapping things up. Any final words about working with publishers, guys?
Oh, I have one more thing.
Yes.
Contracts are really important. Make sure you get things written down and signed.
Right.
Yes. And deliver to the contract.
Yeah.
So you could have all sorts of post-contract discussions, but if it's not in the contract or an amendment, that's not what you do.
Yeah. Very important. If you ever get asked by the publisher, could you send the contract to me to see if that's correct? That's a big red flag. Like, that means they didn't actually see it in the first place. So good idea to make sure that's all nailed down before you even make work for someone, I would say.
Yeah. And related to that, like, getting paid from publishers in other countries can be exciting to work out down here.
My first piece, I got a physical check in the mail. I didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah. That doesn't work in New Zealand anymore. You can't do that. You can't bank. I will sort of throw out a shout. I think that if you can set yourself up with a Wise banking account, Wise is very cool. It used to be TransferWise, but what they do is they have a system people can deposit into a basically an American account, and you can convert it to different countries' currency, including New Zealand, and that is great. So highly recommend that. Even more maybe than PayPal in some cases. If the company who you're working for can do bank transfers but won't do international, then they can do it to the wise one, because it still counts as domestic for them, right?
Okay.
So,
that's who Evil Hat use these days. They seem like a good service.
Yeah, all good.
I had one final piece, which is we've talked sort of quite a lot of nuance around what the good and the bad of working with the publishers is, but one of the guilty pleasures that I have is that working with a large publisher can get your work out to a lot of people. Like certainly early on, maybe there is, you look at the sales figures for some of these big things, and they're not Amazon books, but there's still lots and lots of things sold, and then seeing, I take a little vicarious joy when I look up an old product of mine and say, hey, oh wow, that went to drive through gold, or that went to drive through platinum, and that means that I can't remember what the numbers are, but 20,000 or 25,000 people have bought it, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, that's that's the validation stuff, right? Oh, I'll take that.
Yeah, that's always good.
Seeing it.
Be gone, imposter syndrome for 10 minutes. You'll be fine. This is great.
That and seeing it on a game store shelf.
Yes. That's how people send you photos of, like, I was in this one store, and here's your game in the wild. You're like, that's fantastic. The other thing I like is when if they send you a crate of your, a carton of your books, for the first time opening up that thing and seeing the physical product in your hands with your name on it somewhere is pretty sweet. That's it.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to sort of wrap the panels up. Cool.
Oh, right.
So, do you want to announce that here?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
I'll let Mike do that, because it's
okay. Winner of the Monster of the Week modules on Roll20 is Amy Ward Art. Congratulations. And thanks to Evil Hat for giving us all these vouchers to give away.
Yeah, that's fantastic. This was fun, guys. I don't have that often an occasion to talk to other Kiwi publishers and writers. Most of my conversations have been with people overseas, so this has been good. And I will say, if you've just watched this and you haven't watched anything else, then you're a very strange person. You should watch other things. There are, I think, VODs of these. Correct? These have been recorded. You can watch other panels, and we have more coming up this week to tune into and watch. And so I've been Cam. Thank you for tuning in to watch us here today on Publishers, and I'll have the other two of you make your own sign-offs if you want.
Yep. Thank you from Michael Sands. It's been a fun chat, and I hope everyone enjoyed what wisdom they could glean from what we have to say.
Absolutely. Signing off from Grant as well. And if I think all three of us are available on the KiwiRPG Discord, so if there's something that we haven't talked about that you feel you'd like to know, or if I don't know how much we can help, but if you'd like advice, if you're thinking of something, if you've got something, then I personally would love to bounce an idea off you. Pending all other life's commitments, but I'd absolutely like to hear from you.
Exactly. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks. Appreciate it.